trying to figure out if mic check. If you wanted to say 1, 2.
Bismillah. Very good. Yes, sir.
You like how you sound right now?
It's not on me, brother. I don't need to use a mic. I don't need a mic.
Yeah.
It's not recording right now.
You good out there? Okay. Mic might be a bit much because I have an internal mic.
Do you want to do it without the mic?
No.
No, that's not good.
Ready?
Yes, sir. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The first thing I want to say is a disclaimer. Everybody here by now knows that I just did 40 plus years in prison. And for those 40 plus years, by the mercy and grace of Allah, I studied. The brothers who were with me, we studied. But in all of our studying, we still didn't get everything, not even close. And so I say that to say this here. My first intent was to do a crash course in some of the adab that I noticed is different on the streets than it is in prison. And I chose not to do that because for me that would have been pretentious. And so you brothers, you are used to a particular adab, especially among the Shi'i and Ziyara and the different du'at. You won't get that from me. We didn't do it in prison. We did things very basic, very simple, and we got to the point. Maybe it was a fault, but I'm not going to do any crash courses to pretend. You brothers are going to get a dose of what we did from the best of our abilities in prison. And so, for those of you who are used to a certain etiquette, a certain adab, certain ziyarah, I ask you to forgive me and to excuse me, but we didn't do that. Maybe you brothers can teach me and you can put me up to speed and help shorten the learning curve in regards to the things that we didn't get in prison. That being said, I'm going to start off with reciting from Surah Al-Baqarah. Inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون إن الذين كفروا سواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون ختم الله على قلوبهم وعلى سمعهم وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة
ولهم عذاب عظيم. ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين يخادعون الله والذين آمنوا وما يخدعون إلا أنفسهم وما يشعرون في قلوبهم مرض. This Quran went from 10 to 21.
Is that Jesus Valley?
Yes. Subhanallah. فزادهم الله. Subhanallah. This Quran should be somewhere else.
You want to have it?
Shukran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. في قلوبهم مرض فزادهم الله مرضا ولهم عذاب عليم بما كانوا يكذبون. وإذا قيل لهم لا تفسدوا في الأرض قالوا إنما نحن مصلحون ألا إنهم هم المفسدون ولكن لا يشعرون. وإذا قيل لهم آمنوا كما آمن الناس قالوا أنؤمن كما آمن السفهاء ألا إنهم هم السفهاء ولكن لا يعلمون. وإذا لقوا الذين آمنوا قالوا آمنا وإذا خلوا إلى شياطينهم قالوا إنا معكم إنما نحن مستهزئون. الله يستهزئ بهم ويمدهم في طغيانهم يعمهون. أولئك الذين اشتروا الضلالة بالهدى فما ربحت تجارتهم وما كانوا مهتدين. صدق الله العظيم. In the early part of Islam, during the time of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, the recitation of the Quran was a strange thing among the Quraysh. And that recitation was a mesmerization for many people who knew nothing about Quran. And so, even though my tajweed is terrible, I always like to begin Khutba with the recitation to the best of my ability, understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards the efforts of the believers. That being said, the title of the Khutba in English is Guarding the Frontiers. I'm going to recite from the Quran and I'll proceed from there. بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اصبروا والصبروا والربطوا واتقوا الله لعلكم تفلحون. And that is to say, O ye who believe, be patient and vie with each other in endurance, and be ever garrisoned, and fear the wrath of Allah, that you may be successful. I am not a scholar, and I don't pretend to be. And so I want the brothers and sisters here to understand that anything that I say that is incorrect, that misguides, it is truly from me and my ignorance and my weakness, and I seek Allah's forgiveness for it. And anything that I say that is true, and that it guides, and that it inspires your heart and your mind, fisabilillah, then truly it is good, and all good is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we thank and praise Him for that. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. The ribat. The garrison is the term they're using here. I won't use that term. The ribat is your fortress. The ribat is your body. The ribat is your house. The ribat is the place where the believer dwells. That is the ribat. Historically, the ribat, when the Muslims came to a land and they began to build and they began to set up cities and dwellings, they would build it with a border. And you still see remnants of this architecture in places like North Africa and in certain areas of Senegal and other parts of the Muslim world. They're still there. They're still practicing. And so the very walls that surrounded the city were also the places where the people dwelled. And so you had a gate. Many of you people, you know what I'm talking about. You go into a Muslim city and you have to enter through a gate. You still see this right to this day. But back then, it was a regular practice among the Murabbitun, the people of the Ribat. The practical and the most basic purpose of the Ribat was to protect the people that were encased in the Ribat. The Ribat was also the places where the horses were kept and corralled and protected. In today's time, the horse is your Jeep. The horse is that Mercedes-Benz. The horse is that vehicle that we use every day to get from point A to point B. And in most cases, that car is essential. So I want you to use your imagination, and I want you to think about being in a time where the horse, and in some instances the camel and the ass and the other animals, but the horse was the main and the most important means of transportation. But it was not just a means of transportation, it was also a means of war. And so when we talk about the people of the Ribat, the Murabbitun, one of the things that we know about the Murabbitun through our ancestors and through the Shuyukh who spoke and wrote about the Murabbitun is that in the daytime, the people of the Ribat, they would go out and they would practice all of the things that were necessary to defend the Muslims the believers, the families, and the city. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa salam, he was very clear about the beauty of the horse. And it was necessary for the men in particular to learn horseback riding, to learn archery, to learn wrestling, and to learn the general arts of war. Why was this important? The Muslims were not warmongers. They were not. But the Muslims were ordered to defend themselves. And so when we speak of the ribat, we speak of it in the general term historically as I laid it out. But we have to understand that there's a principle that we have to extract from the idea of the ribat, and it transcends the physical. If I put my arm out and anyone comes within my arm's reach to harm me, he has entered my ribat. I want you to think about this. This is very simple, but we miss it. So I want you to really think. When we pray, what is the standard for walking in front of the Muslim? You put your arm out. Anybody that walks in front of you while you're praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have every right to reach out and stop them. That's your ribat. And so we live in a world, you have road rage, you have people that attack other people for no reason. And so my question to you is this. If someone comes and violates your personal ribat, how are you to react? Can you defend yourself? If you're able-bodied and you don't know how to fight, then you have violated the principle of guarding your frontiers. This is what I'm trying to get you to understand. It goes beyond guarding the borders of a state. It goes beyond that. If you have a wife and children, that is your ribat. And if someone comes to harm your wife and children and you don't know how to fight, how can you guard your ribat? These are things that they're simple and we should know this automatically. But how many of you think about guarding your ribat? Don't answer the question. Think about it. That's one level. That's the most basic level. Every Muslim man who's able-bodied and women, they should learn martial arts. I love the idea of solidarity. Palestine. They are our brothers and sisters over there. And they're really catching hell right now. But there's a concept in Islam called the near struggle. Brothers familiar with it? I love all of the Muslims in the world. And if I could, I would aid every last one of them in everything that they need to protect themselves, to guard their ribat. Listen to me. We should care about everything that's happening in Senegal, in Africa, in Chechnya, in Palestine, in occupied Palestine, in Iran, in Nigeria, and wherever the Muslims are, in China, where the Muslims are being oppressed. We should be concerned. We should, and if we can, we should send money. And if we can, we should send people to go there physically and aid them. But we cannot do that at the expense of our ribat. I came home from prison. This is my city. I was raised in this city. And when I was in this city last, I was a thug. I was a criminal. I was a hooligan. And I committed harm in this city. And then when I came back to the city, they took me downtown to Skid Row, to the so-called Weingart Center. One of the first things that I seen was black people all over the streets. I saw black people in tents. I saw them laying out with no cover. I saw women pull their pants down in the middle of the street with traffic and just take a dump. No shame. No inhibition. No regard for who watching. And I see young men without dementia, young men who are healthy, able-bodied, standing in front of the stores. Man, I need something to eat. Can I get $1 from you? And right down the street, they're giving away jobs. Now, what I'm saying to you is that anybody who is down there in that situation, unless they are Majnun, the Majnun, those are the crazy, so-called crazy, mentally ill. They're the only ones who have a pass. But what was glaring to me is that they did not guard their ribat. So when we come to the Quran and we read Surah Ali Imran and we get to Ayah 200 and Allah says that we are to guard our frontiers, that doesn't mean that we're supposed to just sit and watch the city and watch the roads coming into the city. That means you have to guard the ribat on every level and in every phase. I left the streets. They had a show out called Donahue, the talk show. Some of you guys old enough, you know what I'm talking about. And whenever there was a topic that came up that had to do with homosexuality, if someone got up and tried to defend it, the whole audience would turn against them. This was a fact. You can go, we live in an information age. If you doubt me, go look at the old Donahue film. If you came up and you said anything that hinted of you okaying sodomy, homosexuality, and lesbianism, the audience would turn against you. And from a prison cell, I watched them come with other shows like Ricky Lake, Geraldo Rivera, and all of these different shows that seem innocent, right? And I saw the trick bag being sewn together. And so what happened is, now if you watch any of those shows, and they talk about homosexuality, and if you get up in the audience and you say, well, I'm against that, what do you think is going to happen? So my question to you is, how can we only think of guarding the physical ribat and we ignore all of the rest of the frontiers? And I'll be more specific. The world in general, the black community, don't mean to alienate anyone, but I'm speaking about the black community in Los Angeles, California. Aside from the Muslims, one of the things that is glaringly absent is belief, real belief in Allah. In the Quran, in Surah Al-Zukhruf, Surah 43, forgive me, 35, 34, forgive me. Those who leave off the remembrance of Allah, Allah will appoint for them a shaitan. And that shaitan will make something that is bad seemingly good. And that which is good seemingly bad. Now you tell me what has happened in Los Angeles, except that the people have abandoned their ribat. I was taught a long time ago that if you don't think for yourself, somebody will think for you. And so we have a city of people who are not thinking for themselves. The homosexuals are thinking for them. The faggots, the lesbians, the criminals, the Nazis. Think about it. Years ago, I gave a Khutba. What is your Aqidah? A couple of brothers in here who was in prison with me who remember that Khutba. And so I want to bring this together with the rebuttal. I heard on the radio not long ago a so-called women's studies professor giving a lecture. And she was well-spoken, very studious person, professor, obviously. She used beautiful phraseology. Her language was just, it was mesmerizing. I'm like, man, who is this? Guess what she was teaching? She was teaching that homosexuality is wrong. And she intellectualized it. And so, what I'm saying to you is that the mind is a ribat. And if you do not guard what goes into your mind, what you allow to influence your mind, if you do not guard the borders of your thinking, if you do not question the ideas and the thoughts and the words and the concepts that breach the border of your thinking, you will be infiltrated. Your walls will crumble. And instead of you being called Charles and being the man that your mother and your father raised you to be, you will become Charlene. And you will go around saying that you have a choice to choose your sex. This is what's going on. Why is this important in Juma? Why? Because the people have abandoned their ribat. This is the only way that someone can get in your head and flip it. So when we understand guarding of the ribat, we have to understand that it means much more than watching the block. It means much more than watching the city limits and who comes in and out. It means that, but it also means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gave every man and woman in this world a nafs. Did He not? Everyone has a soul. Everyone has a self. And we know nafasa is the precious thing. Right? When you have something that's precious, do you throw it out in the yard? Do you leave it unattended? If you have a thing that's precious and you know that if you leave it filthy, if you leave it dirty, that the longer you leave it filthy and dirty, the filth and dirt becomes crystallized. And the more you leave it filthy and dirty, it becomes so hard that it becomes almost impossible to get it back to its natural state. And so if you have something precious like that, do you abandon it? If you do, are you acting in your own best interest? No, you're not. You're not guarding your riba. And so, forgive me for not using a lot of the language of the ulama. I am not among the ulama. I'm among the people, the thugs, the hoodlums, the people that's in these streets, because we can't bring Islam to a people if we're in some tower somewhere looking down on them. I get down and I sit down and eat with the gangsters. And I don't preach to them. I just show them my behavior. Guarding the ribat is one of the most essential things that we as a people must do. All of the people, but in particular the African American people, who right to this day suffer from plantation psychosis. I look at the city and I say, well, where are the black businesses? Do they exist? Sure, there's some around. People claim that they have a problem when immigrants come in and, you know, their neighborhoods are gone. I was one of them. I ain't gonna lie. I hated the fact. I grew right up here on Central, man. I lived at 10528 Wadsworth Avenue, went down Central, went to 76th Street. I up and down Central Avenue my whole life from a kid. All this was African American. All this had tradition. People grew up and family was important. Even the gang members that I was with, we had this thing, man, where we had picnics. We would go get meat and stuff. Sometimes we stole it. But we would go get meat and we'd go to the park and we would love on each other. We would play games. We were gang members. But we had this camaraderie that you couldn't buy. Right? And when you walked out, you saw a sea of black people. They would go up and down Central, and some of you, I'm telling my age, but if you think back, they would, everywhere there was a lot, on the weekends, what did we see? That black people they had their little small swap meets, all up and down Central. Even on the west side. You had it. And then they disappeared. It's not enough Khutba for me to explain that, what I learned about why they disappeared. But there were forces in this city that plotted against the African American community. And they secretly got laws and ordinances passed that made it illegal to just pop up surreptitiously and start you a flea market. I didn't know this then. We wasn't guarding our riba. Communities have dissipated. It's not the immigrants' fault. You come over here, you want to make a life, you go where it's most likely where you have the obvious chance of getting cheap dwellings, and you go, where is that at? Who are the poor? Us. So you can't knock them for doing that. But the reason why the communities don't exist is because we didn't guard our riba. And so when the brothers in the 80s got money, what did they do with the money? They bought cars. They bought Rolls Royces. They bought Ferraris. They bought gold. And they bought all this stuff. And then 20, 30 years later, they ain't even got a hood. Can't anyone come and displace you from an area that you control. Allah said in the Quran, guard your ribat. If you would have took this principle, if you would have understood this and applied this, you would still have your neighborhood just like the white folks in Beverly Hills. And the immigrants wouldn't have been less. They would have found a place. They would have built their ribat because that's what the immigrant community does. Do they not? Even many of them who are not Muslims, they understand the importance of guarding the ribat. When you go to their stores, they don't have Junebug and Lil Bob in their store. They got their people in the store, as they should. They got their brother and their sister that they're helping get out of warfare and poverty and danger. They're helping them. They're doing it. And you can't knock them for doing that. You should have been doing the same thing. Malcolm X, Malik al-Hajj, he said that black people, because of our experience, we should be the most politically astute people in America. But the reality is we're the least politically astute. Democrats every year can come around and get your vote, and black folks will just give it to them. Republicans come, they go to the Republican, because there are a lot of Republican blacks, by the way. They come to them, they just give them the vote. Well, what happened to your party? You brothers follow what I'm saying? The sisters? Guarding the ribat means more than just physically guarding a barrier. It means guarding your heart. It means guarding your mind. It means guarding your thoughts. It means guarding your spiritual dwelling. You understand what I'm saying to you? You have been given a precious thing. Nafasa, nafs is a precious thing that Allah has bequeathed to every human being. It's precious. And if you don't treat it as if it's precious, then what will happen is you will become homosexual, you will become criminals, you will become homie killers, you will commit parenticide, fratricide, genocide, and you'll do all of the things that we're suffering from as a people today because you failed to guard your ribat. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. بارك الله فيكم. محمد. You do not truly believe until you love for your brother that which you love for yourself. And that includes the sisters. Very simple, very basic, very easy to understand concept. One of the easiest concepts in Islam, yet one of the most difficult to implement. Now I want you to think about this. Most of us, not all of us, everybody's experience is not the same. But most of us love our mothers. If we don't love anybody on the planet, even when our mothers are not good to, my mother was a gangster. No other way to put it. Loved her to death, would have killed up a whole bunch of people to protect her. Wouldn't have even thought twice about it. Would have chopped heads off, legs off, killed youngsters too. I would have killed minors if it meant keeping my mama alive. I'm just being very, very real with you. But she was a terrible mother. She was a terrible mother. But my love for her, I couldn't put a gauge on it. And it probably wasn't even natural. She may not even deserve it, but it's just what it was. And so I'm saying to you, think about someone that you love like that. You do whatever it is that they need done. Think about your daughter or your son, right? If any danger comes to them, or if you perceive you running across everything, you doing it. You're not even going to think about it. Your little baby getting ready to get hit, or somebody getting ready to attack your little, it's on. It's on. Ain't nothing to think about. There's nothing to think about. You move it because you have an attachment. You have a love, and you have a bond with that being that is priceless. That's the same bond that you're supposed to have with your brother and your sister. And we know that it just doesn't happen overnight, but we have to understand that we are supposed to be striving for that type of brotherhood and sisterhood. And when we're not striving for it, and when we're distant, when you got this masjid over here, and this masjid over there, this imam over here glorifying what he does, this imam over here, he concerned about what he does, and they're only miles away, you know what happens? Disconnection. And when there's disconnection, if you have a rebot, remember the walls are solid. We're using symbolism here, but I want you to understand, the walls are solid to guard the city. But if there's a gap, somebody comes to the back of the city and puts a big hole in the wall, guess what? A whole army can come through and just take over your rebot. That's what's happening on the individual level and on the collective level when we refuse to guard the rebot, tighten the ranks, and to bear down and do what we're supposed to do as Muslims. So I want to say, before I conclude, there's a whole lot that could have been said and probably should have been said. It's not the time to do that. I was taught a long time ago that the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, he would give the khutbah sometimes in such a way that the people thought that there was an army just over the hill. Urgency. We must understand that our predicament requires an extreme urgency. Everybody in this room is going to die.
Sooner or later.
Everybody in this room, you are going to die. And only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows when that day is. And so if you keep pussyfooting around with the deen, playing around with the deen, playing around with the gift and the blessing that Allah gave you, then one day you're going to wake up and it's going to be over. You're going to wake up, you're going to get hit by a car. You're going to wake up and you're going to die of a heart attack. You're going to wake up and you're going to have cancer, pancreatic cancer that you can't recover from. You're going to wake up and you're going to be sick from an illness you know nothing about, the doctors know nothing about, but Allah knows about, and it's going to take you out. And so the question is, what are you doing with the time that Allah has given you? It's only a little bit left. Stop fooling yourself. If you're a black man in America, you're lucky if you get 75 years out your life. Statistics are statistics. It's a reality. We know that Allah is the greatest and he can decree what he will. But we also know that Allah has decreed everything. And so the statistics don't lie. If you make it past 75 years as a black man in America, you've defied the statistics. You are a part of the outliers, like our Sheikh. He's made it by the mercy and grace of Allah, approaching 80, and we thank Allah, we praise Allah, and we glorify Allah for that blessing. But we have to understand that it's not guaranteed. And so my question to you is, what is your Aqidah? What is your belief? What is it that you believe as your core belief, that you tie down and lock in, that you know about and practice without thinking about it? What is it? The homosexuals have theirs. The racists, they have theirs. The thieves, they have theirs. The gangsters, they have theirs. And they live by it. And they die by it. And they will kill you by it. What are you doing for Islam? What are you willing to die for in regards to set up this deen? You must guard your frontiers. And the moment that you understand this, you guard the frontiers of your mind, of the qalb. You guard the frontiers of your family and your community, and you close ranks. And you're willing to die, fisabilillah. As Malcolm X said, then and then only will you get your freedom.
Salawat. Allahumma salli Muhammad.
I don't want to leave you with that. I want to leave you with some inspiration. This is the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the deen al-haq. Whatever Allah says is the truth. Remember that. In the Quran, Allah says, man shall receive not but that which he strives for. And that which he strives for shall be seen. Allah speaks the truth. There's no lying in what Allah says. So you have to believe it. Allah said that you will get it. The only thing that'll stop you is if Allah in his decree has another thing for you. And usually that other thing, it gets you back to what you're trying to get in the first place. It's just not the way you want it. I didn't want to come back to LA. I wanted to go to the Oakland. They got everything set up for me there. I had everything going for me. Job, car, woman, money, all the things I needed. But I came here, and every time I tried to get back up there, Allah sent me back here. And so I did istikhara. I prayed to Allah. I said, wait, let me pray to Allah. And I woke up and my decision was made. This is where I'm at. I'm getting in the mud. I'm getting in the hood. I'm getting among the prostitutes. I'm getting among the criminals, the gang members, and the thieves. And remember, the shaitan swore that he would lie on the straight path. What does that mean? Shaitan is right up in here, brother. Shaitan's right up in here. So we have to understand, we have an open enemy, and it's Shaitan. And one of the best ways to defend against Shaitan and all of his minions is to guard your frontiers. And so anything that I say that has guided or inspired, truly, it is from Allah. And I seek Allah's mercy and blessing, and we thank him for it. And anything that I said that is incorrect and misguided, it is truly from my own ignorance, and I seek Allah's forgiveness for it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Salawat.
Now there.
Allah.